Someone was in the pod. The tracks go off in this direction. Welcome to another Down the Rabbit Hole video. I'm talking about another item in my Star Wars Kenner collection. This is the Dewback, the creature that was briefly, very briefly seen in the first Star Wars film, and they devoted an entire toy to it. Now, mine is incomplete. You will, anybody who's a big collector knows the Dewback should have like a lasso kind of reins thing going around his head that the Stormtrooper can hold on to. Unfortunately, mine is missing. And why? Because this isn't even my Dewback. I never thought this was actually worth getting, and I didn't even want it. But I seem to recall it might have been the same kids I was babysitting back in the 80s, the ones who gave me the Ewok Village playset. This might be theirs, this might be my brother's, this might be an old roommate of mine's. I can't remember, but somebody gave this to me. And I was just like, yeah, sure, the Dewback, all right, it's dumb. I don't even want it, but I'll take it off your hands. And I think that's not fair to this particular toy. It has quite a good legacy. And from what I've gathered, I've watched a few videos before doing this one, a lot of people really liked this, and they gave good reasons. So I just thought, you know what, I'm kind of glad I've got the Dewback, even though I always thought it was ridiculous and pointless and a dumb reason to make a toy. However, on the topic of toys, anytime I discuss my Star Wars collection, I gotta have me some Stormtrooper whiskey. And why? Because for those who don't know, a few years ago, there were concerns about the COPPA group who were trying to protect kids from anybody doing YouTube videos that had to do with toys and something aimed at kids. You got to make your video marked as this is intended for kids. And much as I enjoy kids, I think my stuff, although it's a lot of kiddie things, I think of it as kid kind of adjacent. It's not intended for kids per se. So to mark this as not intended for kids, I'm going to have me a shot of my Stormtrooper whiskey. So I always do this. Let's pour us a nice big shot here. This is Talisker that's in here. So, as per always, we would be honored if you would join us. Good stuff. Okay, now, the Dewback. Why did I not want it? Well, it does appear in the first film in a very, very short sequence. When the Stormtroopers find the escape pod on the desert floor of Tatooine, there is one of these guys way off in the distance, just sitting there. And that's the entire sequence. I remember thinking to myself, well, I mean, that's great because it shows some kind of real-world application of beasts of the time, etc. Like, it fit the world. And I believe that was actually filmed in Tunisia because there's a couple of behind-the-scenes shots I didn't even know existed until I gathered up a couple of images for this video. And there's a picture of some Tunisians, I would imagine, in Stormtrooper outfits from the 70s. I'm pretty sure this is from that original filming sequence because the one and only person who's wearing non-Stormtrooper gear looks like it's 70s type clothing. So there were a bunch of them who went out to the sand dunes of Tunisia and were quickly filmed tracking where the progress of the droids. So, and this Dewback was built, thrown onto the desert sand, and filmed from a very far, long way away. Now, it's not the only time the Dewback shows up. There was actually one bit that I really quite appreciate. When Luke and Obi-Wan are approaching the Mos Eisley Cantina, you can see a Dewback standing beside the door, and also when they are departing, the Dewback is still there. And I really like the fact that the Dewback is there for what I can only refer to as the Ray Harryhausen effect. I'm going to get to that later, but let's talk about the toy. Let's move the whiskey to the side here. The Dewback itself. Now, why was this, first of all, why was this made? And second of all, why was this rather popular? I think Kenner probably thought to themselves, you know what, we need something for the bad guys to ride. We've got Luke's Landspeeder, we've got the Jawa Sandcrawler, we've got a bunch of stuff, but there's nothing that kids can then put their Stormtroopers in. There was going to be the Imperial Transport later, but that didn't happen in time, so I guess Kenner just thought, well, here's something for the bad guys. Here's a as the kids go out into their sandbox, they can at least throw the stormtroopers onto this, and then they can have a bit of fun. Interestingly, this is the first mountable creature in Kenner's line. Like, what you see later on occurring with things like the Tauntaun and that was all kind of said old history by that point. This is the first one of the creatures that is actually rideable, and it has some pretty cool stuff to it. Like, as you can already tell, wagging the tail causes the head to move. That's really cool. He does seem very happy, doesn't he? Doesn't he look like he's really having a good time? He's smiling. The legs are fully posable, fully movable, and it's a pretty good design. It's very big. And from what I gather, a lot of kids that, videos I've seen online, a lot of people said they loved this thing because it wasn't specifically the Empire. Sure, you saw that in the movie, but anybody could ride these things. So they would, in their adventures out in the sandbox, they could put Luke in a Dewback, or they could put Han Solo in a Dewback. I guess that makes sense. It's kind of a neat, large beast. You can make up some interesting stories related to the Dewback. I kind of get it. For me, it was dopey. It's like, okay, you're going to have this giant lizard that barely is visible in one scene. You're going to make a toy out of it. All right, you're just going for a cash grab, was sort of my intention, my impression at the time. But no, a lot of people really loved this thing. So, okay. Couple of interesting things. So now, as anybody would know, the Stormtrooper can come out. Now, it's very interesting. Ooh, can he? Hang on. He's gonna work with me on this. Come on. Okay, there we go. Wanted to be super careful there. Let's sit you down there. What we would see later with the Tauntaun is you've got a little false trapdoor thing in the back of the beast that the legs can go into, and anybody can ride it. Good job getting them back out, but this guy managed. What I don't understand, though, is it's a cheat, and I understand it from a point of view of like, okay, we got to make this thing look right. What's with the fur? Why do they have furry legs on the side of this thing? The few behind-the-scenes shots you can see of the Dewback, it does not have fur on that spot. Like, the Stormtrooper's legs are very visible, but I guess the 78, 79 engineers coming up with this design thought, well, we're clearly going to stick the Stormtrooper through the back of the thing, but that's going to look weird, so we'll make these big saddle legs, and we'll cover them in something so that it's not clear if there's somebody's legs in there or not. And I guess it works. You know, the saddlebags are pretty good, and you can imagine, okay, there's nobody in that right now, and then if I put the Stormtrooper back in, you can well imagine those are his legs in there. So, yeah, it worked. Now, with mine, there we go, got him back up more safely. With mine, as I say, the reins are gone. They are one of those things that break super easily, so good luck for me ever getting a replacement of that. And this is a little loose here. I think the belt is probably, it could go up a notch, but you know what? I'm actually not taking any chances on that. Does it actually have the dates down here? 19, products, no, I can't make out a date. It might be in there. Hong Kong. Made in Hong Kong, some serial numbers. Oh boy, I'll bet there is actually a date written down there, but now I'm going to need a shot of that whiskey because I'm about to do something that is historic for me. Again, this wasn't really my Dewback, but I can appreciate his value, his charm, and so therefore, I think it is time for this Dewback. Never mind this highly believable representation of Tatooine that's in front of us. I'm actually going to make this Dewback walk on some genuine Tatooine sand. Anybody who's watched my videos knows that I did quite a few trips to different filming locations for the original trilogy, and I did 2 different representations for Tatooine. I went to Death Valley, where the Jawas captured R2-D2. I also went to Yuma, Arizona, where Jabba's sail barge sequence was filmed with the Sarlacc pit. In my trip back from Yuma, I brought with me a bag of sand from where the film was made. And I thought to myself, I think it's only fitting that the Dewback does get to stand on some genuine Tatooine sand. So I'm about to do that. I'm not taking it out of the bag. I'm not going to make a big mess of this floor. I'm just going to leave it in its baggie. But let's have this Dewback set foot on some genuine Tatooine sand, even though it's in a baggie. Dun, dun, dun. There we go. The Dewback, my Dewback, this toy Dewback, is standing on some genuine Tatooine sand. Awesome. What did I mean when I talked about the Ray Harryhausen effect? Well, there is this tendency I have noticed with animators to make creatures move around a heck of a lot in a way that is unnatural, and you never see real creatures ever do it. It seems like anybody who does stop motion animation or CGI or anything like that, they always want to make creatures move their head or wiggle or growl or jump or flip their wings or anything. And I remember watching, there was a show I saw on TV where somebody, it was like some kids program, and they had an iguana sitting there on the desk talking about animals and, you know, how, what the difference was with the iguana. Did it move around? Did it thrash its tail? Did it like howl and lick its lips and do all the kind of stuff you would see it if it was CGI? No, it stood almost completely still, because that's the way real animals behave. I mean, sure, if it saw an opportunity to leave, I'm sure it would bolt off the table. But it didn't. And what I really like about the original Dewback is it barely moved at all. In fact, you do see it move. I don't know if I can find footage of this. It's going to be very, very hard. But when Luke is approaching the creature cantina and you see the Dewback beside the door, its head in the film is actually moving down extremely slowly. Like it's almost unrecognizable. I'd recommend anybody who's got the original Star Wars films. I mean, you'd need the original cut because they replaced it with the god-awful CGI Dewback. But if you can find the original cut or watch on YouTube, see if you can find the original way that the approaching the cantina looked. There's a Dewback sitting there. Doesn't have the stormtrooper on his back. Can I take it out? I'll leave him here for now. And it's sort of just standing there. I think it's sort of looking this way. And its head slowly goes down. There must have been some stagehand guy in there or whatever. Just slightly moving. And I always appreciated that because I always thought, you know, that's true. A big lizard wouldn't be all getting up in your grill and jumping around and doing all this crazy stuff. It would basically just stand there like an elephant, like a rhino. Yeah, sure, if any of these creatures are threatened, they can be they can move very quickly, but they don't tend to do so. When you're this big, you tend to be rather conservative with your use of energy. So a Dewback, a real one, and the one that we saw in the original 70s film, was like that. I will point out there was a documentary that came on the Blu-ray set called Anatomy of a Dewback. I think somebody's posted it on YouTube. I won't post any links because it'll probably be taken down by Disney right away. But there is a whole sequence about how for the 1997 version of the special edition of Star Wars, they replaced this noble beast with a dumb-looking, CGI'd to death Ray Harryhausen on steroids creature with giant talons, and it lumbers around and that it squawks and it's wagging its tail. And I remember thinking to myself, no, you've wrecked what was something I really liked about the original creature. This version of the Dewback, the one that kind of just stood there on the horizon, didn't do anything, was very quiet, with his Tunisian rider just sitting there saying, this is great, I'm in a film. Don't make the creature do all kinds of crazy stuff. They don't need to. This version of the Dewback is the one that I actually like a lot now, and I'm very pleased I have this one in my collection. I'm very glad the kid I babysat, roommate, brother, whoever it was who gave this to me did so, because now I've got the Dewback I like, not that stupid one from the 90s that became something out of Toontown with the Ray Harryhausen effect on steroids. Ugh. Anyway, don't get me started on that. Anyway, so there is my Dewback, well, the one that I now have in my collection, on some genuine Tatooine sand. Until next time, we'll see you down the rabbit hole.